The morning Owen Jameson found his prize Herefords foaming at the mouth and collapsing in the south pasture, he thought his world had ended before it truly began. It was April 1878 in Montezuma, Colorado, and the spring sun had barely crested the San Juan Mountains when he heard the panicked bellowing that would change everything. He ran through knee-high grass still wet with dew, his boots pounding against earth that had taken him 3 years of backbreaking work to call his own, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 17 head of cattle were down, thrashing and convulsing, white foam pouring from their mouths while the rest of the herd scattered in terror across the valley floor. Owen dropped to his knees beside his best breeding cow, a gentle giant named Rosie who had produced 3 strong calves in as many years. Her brown eyes rolled back in agony, her massive body shuddering with seizures that made the ground tremble beneath him. He pressed his hands against her heaving side, feeling the rapid hammer of her failing heart, and knew with sickening certainty that this was no natural illness. The water trough in the corner of the pasture gleamed with an oily sheen that did not belong there, and the bitter almond scent that hung in the morning air told him everything he needed to know. "Poison," he whispered, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. His hands trembled as he stood, scanning the horizon for any sign of the bastard who had done this. Clayton Merrick. It had to be Clayton Merrick, the neighboring rancher who had made no secret of his fury when Owen had outbid him for this land at auction. The same man who had warned Owen that newcomers did not last long in these mountains, that accidents happened to those who did not know their place. Owen was 26 years old, had fought in range wars down in New Mexico territory, and had saved every cent from 5 years of cowboying to buy this spread. He had survived drought, wolves, and claim jumpers, but watching his life's work die in convulsions before his eyes felt like a different kind of death entirely. Rosie gave one final shudder and went still beneath his hands. He closed his eyes against the burning rage that threatened to overwhelm his better judgment, because riding over to Merrick's place with his rifle would solve nothing and end with him dancing at the end of a rope. He forced himself to move, to think, to count. 17 down. How many more had drunk from that trough? The herd had scattered across 40 acres, and he could see cattle stumbling in the distance, their movements uncoordinated and wrong. He needed help, needed it desperately, but his only ranch hand had quit 2 weeks ago, scared off by Merrick's threats. The nearest town doctor was in Silverton, a full day's ride away, and Owen did not know if cattle poison and human poison required the same treatment anyway. He was running toward the barn for his horse when he saw the rider approaching from the eastern trail. His hand went instinctively to the colt at his hip, but something made him pause. The horse was a sturdy Appaloosa, and the rider sat easy in the saddle with the confidence of someone born to it. As they drew closer, Owen realized with surprise that the rider was a woman, tall and lean in worn buckskin trousers and a man's work shirt. Her dark blonde hair pulled back in a practical braid that hung past her shoulders. She pulled up 20 feet away, her sharp blue eyes taking in the scene with a sweep that missed nothing. "I saw your cattle from the ridge road," she called out, her voice clear and steady. "That is poison, is it not?" Owen's jaw tightened. "What business is it of yours?" "None, except I know how to help if you want it." She swung down from her horse with fluid grace, already reaching for the saddlebags behind her. "My name is Rebecca Hartford. My father was a veterinarian before he died, and I learned everything he knew. That looks like arsenic poisoning based on the symptoms I can see from here." Owen stared at her, hope and suspicion warring in his chest. Women veterinarians were rarer than hen's teeth, and strangers offering help in these parts usually wanted something in return. Why would you help me? Rebecca's eyes met his, and he saw something fierce and honest burning there. Because Clayton Merrick killed my father's practice by spreading rumors that he was incompetent, and because I saw Merrick's ranch hand riding away from this direction about an hour before dawn. I was up on the ridge checking my snare lines. She pulled a leather bag from her saddlebag and started walking toward him. We can stand here talking while your cattle die, or you can let me try to save the ones that still live. Your choice, mister. The practical sense in her words cut through his paralysis. Owen Jameson, he said shortly, and thank you. Tell me what you need. Rebecca was already moving past him toward the nearest struggling cow, her bag clutched in one hand. Activated charcoal if you have any milk, eggs, anything to coat their stomachs and absorb the poison. How long ago do you think they drank? Could not have been more than an hour. I checked them at first light and they were fine. Owen jogged alongside her, his mind racing. I have milk in the spring house and there are laying hens in the coop. Get everything you can carry, and buckets, clean buckets. Rebecca dropped to her knees beside a young steer that was foaming at the mouth, its eyes glassy with pain. She put her hands on its neck, feeling for something, then looked up at Owen with grim determination. Go, fast. This one is still fighting. Owen ran. His lungs burned as he sprinted to the spring house, grabbed the heavy milk cans, then changed direction to the chicken coop. The hens squawked and scattered as he reached under them with shaking hands, pulling out every egg he could find and cradling them in his shirt. He snatched 3 wooden buckets from the barn wall and was back at Rebecca's side in what felt like hours, but could only have been minutes. She had somehow gotten the steer's head up, was holding its jaw open with strength that surprised him given her slender frame. Pour milk directly into its mouth, slowly so it does not choke. I need to get the charcoal ready for the others. She demonstrated the angle, and Owen took over, tilting the milk can carefully while the steer coughed and struggled. Rebecca was already moving to the next animal, a heifer that had collapsed on her side. From her leather bag, she pulled packets of what looked like black powder, mixing them rapidly with milk in one of the buckets. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, no wasted motion, and Owen realized she had done this before. She had her arm down the heifer's throat, forcing the mixture into its stomach while speaking in a low, soothing voice. How many more are showing symptoms? She asked without looking up. Owen scanned the pasture, his heart sinking. I count at least 12 more that are stumbling or down. God knows how many drank but are not showing signs yet. Then we split up. You take the milk and eggs, get as much into them as you can. Make them drink even if they fight you. I'll follow with the charcoal mixture. We're trying to absorb and neutralize the poison before it shuts down their organs completely. Rebecca pulled her arm free, wiped it on her pants, and moved to the next cow. The ones already dead, we cannot help, but the ones still breathing have a chance. They worked through the morning like soldiers in a battle, and in a way it was exactly that. Owen forced milk down the throats of animals that weighed 10 times what he did, wrestling with convulsing cattle that could easily kill him with one panicked kick. His shirt was soaked with sweat and milk and worse, his arms screaming with exhaustion, but he did not stop. Rebecca was everywhere at once, it seemed, her quiet voice directing him to the animals that needed help most urgently, her skilled hands performing treatments that looked like a mixture of science and desperate hope. The sun climbed higher, turning the mountain valley into a furnace. Owen's water canteen was long empty, his throat raw from breathing hard, but Rebecca never slowed. She moved from cow to cow with relentless focus, checking pulses, forcing medicine, making rapid decisions about which animals had the best chance. Some she passed by with just a shake of her head, and Owen learned not to look at those too closely. Each one represented money he could not afford to lose, dreams that were dying in the grass. By noon, the worst seemed to be over for the cattle that had survived. 9 animals were dead, which meant Owen had lost nearly half his breeding stock in a single morning. But 13 were still alive, though they lay in the grass looking weak and miserable. Rebecca sat down hard beside the last one she had treated, her face pale beneath the tan, her hands trembling with exhaustion. Owen walked over and wordlessly handed her his canteen, which he had just refilled from the pump. She looked up at him with grateful eyes and drank deeply, water running down her chin. He found himself noticing details he had been too panicked to see before. The strong line of her jaw, the competent set of her shoulders, the way her eyes reflected the blue of the Colorado sky. "You saved them," he said, his voice rough. "I do not know how to thank you." Rebecca wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Do not thank me yet. The next 24 hours will tell if the treatment worked. Some of them might still have organ damage that will kill them slowly." She looked out across the pasture at the covered shapes of the dead cattle, her expression hardening. "But yes, we saved most of them. That is more than Merrick intended." The name brought Owen's rage flooding back, hot and bitter. "I am going to kill him." "No, you are not." Rebecca's voice was sharp. "Because that is exactly what he wants. He ruins you, you kill him, and you hang for murder while he becomes a martyr. His family takes both ranches, and he wins even from the grave." Owen wanted to argue, but the cold logic in her words stopped him. "Then what do I do?" "Let him get away with this. You prove he did it. You get the law involved. And you make sure every rancher in this valley knows what kind of man Clayton Merrick is." Rebecca stood up, groaning slightly as her knees straightened. "But first, you help me get these cattle comfortable and watch them through the night. Then you ride into town and report this to the sheriff. Do you have a sample of the poisoned water? I can get one." Owen looked at her with new respect. "You have done this before." "Been caught in the middle of range disputes, I mean." A shadow passed across Rebecca's face. "My father treated cattle for half the ranchers in the San Juans. When he would not take sides in water disputes, when he insisted on treating everyone's animals fairly regardless of politics, they turned on him. Merrick started the rumors, but others were happy to spread them. Within 6 months, my father had no clients left. He died of a heart attack last winter, and I think it was the stress and shame that killed him more than anything else." Owen felt something twist in his chest. "I am sorry. That was wrong." "Yes, it was." Rebecca's voice was steady, but he could see the pain in her eyes. "Which is why I will not stand by and watch Merrick destroy another good man's livelihood. My father taught me everything about veterinary medicine, but he also taught me that you stand up for what is right even when it costs you." They stood there in the afternoon sun, 2 people who had been strangers at dawn, connected now by shared battle and shared purpose. Owen found himself wanting to know more about this unusual woman who rode alone through the mountains and faced down-range wars with the same calm efficiency she brought to treating poisoned cattle. But there was work to do, and the cattle needed watching. "I have a bunkhouse that is empty," Owen said, surprising himself with the offer. "If you are willing to stay and help me watch them through the night, you would be welcome to sleep there. It is not much, but it is clean and the roof does not leak." Rebecca studied him for a long moment, and Owen had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing straight through to his bones. Finally, she nodded. "I will stay. Not because I need shelter, but because those cattle will need monitoring every few hours. If their condition worsens, there are additional treatments I can try." "Fair enough." Owen looked down at his ruined clothes and suppressed a laugh. I should probably clean up before I offend your sensibilities. I have been elbow-deep in cow's stomach all morning, Rebecca said dryly. My sensibilities are already well offended. But yes, we should both wash up before we do anything else. Then we need to move the dead cattle away from the others and cover them properly. And you need to collect that water sample before anything disturbs the evidence. They worked through the afternoon with a comfortable rhythm that felt strange given how recently they had met. Owen found Rebecca easy to work alongside. She did not expect him to do everything, did not wait to be told what needed doing, and had twice his knowledge when it came to animal care. Together they dragged the dead cattle to a ravine beyond the pasture, covered them with brush to keep the scavengers away until Owen could properly deal with them. He collected water from the poison trough in a clean mason jar, sealed it tight, and labeled it with the date. The surviving cattle were moved to a different pasture with a clean water source, where they could be easily monitored. Rebecca checked each one carefully, taking pulses, examining eyes and gums, noting which animals seemed to be recovering well and which were still dangerously weak. She produced a small notebook from her saddlebag and wrote everything down in neat, precise handwriting. You really are a veterinarian, Owen said, watching her work. Not officially. Women cannot get licensed no matter how much they know. Rebecca did not look up from her notes. But I have been treating animals since I was 12 years old, and I have probably seen more cases than most certified veterinarians in Colorado. My father made sure I learned everything properly, not just folk remedies but actual medical science. Where did he study? Owen was genuinely curious now. Philadelphia. He was trained at the veterinary college there before coming west. Rebecca finished her notes and tucked the notebook away. He loved these mountains, loved the work, loved helping people build their herds. It broke his heart when they turned on him. Owen heard the grief beneath her matter-of-fact tone. Is that why you are still here? Because of him? I am here because this is my home too. I was born in these mountains, and I will not be driven out by small-minded men who think women should stay in the kitchen. Rebecca's eyes flashed with defiance. My father left me his medical books, his instruments, and his knowledge. I intend to use all of it. Good, Owen said simply. The world needs more people willing to stand their ground. Something shifted in Rebecca's expression, a softening around her eyes. You are not what I expected when I rode down here this morning. What did you expect? Another arrogant rancher who would refuse help from a woman, even if it meant watching his animals die. Rebecca smiled slightly. I am glad I was wrong. Owen felt warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. I learned a long time ago that pride is a luxury poor men cannot afford. If you know how to help, I would be a fool to refuse. They walked back to the ranch house together as the sun began its descent toward the mountain peaks. Owen's home was modest, a sturdy log cabin with a stone chimney and a covered porch that caught the evening breeze. He had built it himself with timber from his own land, and while it would never be grand, it was solid and honest work. I can heat water for washing, Owen offered. The pump is around back, and there is soap and clean towels in the bunkhouse. Make yourself comfortable while I see to the horses. Rebecca nodded, already heading for the pump with her saddlebags over her shoulder. Owen watched her go, then shook his head at himself and went to tend to the animals. Both horses needed rubbing down and feeding after the long, hard day, and the chickens were raising hell about being disturbed twice in one day. The familiar routine of evening chores helped settle his mind, gave him space to process everything that had happened. 9 cattle dead. It would set him back more than a year, maybe 2 if he could not rebuild his breeding program. But 13 had survived, which meant he still had a ranch, still had a future, and he had Rebecca Hartford to thank for that. A woman he had not known existed 12 hours ago had saved everything he had worked for, asked nothing in return, and was now staying to make sure her work did not go to waste. Owen carried heated water to the bunkhouse and knocked on the door frame. "Water is ready when you want it." "Thank you," Rebecca's voice came from inside. "I will just be a few minutes." Owen retreated to his own house, stripped off his ruined clothes and washed with cold water from the pump. He dressed in clean denims and his only good shirt, then started a fire in the stove and began preparing dinner. It was nothing fancy, just salt pork and beans with cornbread, but it was hot and filling. He was setting the table when Rebecca appeared in the doorway, cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes from her saddlebags. She looked different with her face washed and her hair rebraided, younger somehow, though he guessed she was probably close to his own age. The setting sun through the window turned her hair to gold and highlighted the fine bones of her face. Owen found himself staring and quickly looked away, busying himself with the coffee pot. "I hope you are hungry," he said. "It is not much, but there is plenty of it. It smells wonderful." Rebecca came inside, looking around the cabin with open curiosity. "You built this yourself, every log?" "Took me most of a winter." Owen ladled food onto 2 plates. "Sit down, please. You more than earned your supper today." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both too hungry and tired for conversation. Owen found himself acutely aware of Rebecca's presence in his home, the first woman to sit at his table since his mother had died when he was 15. It felt strange and right at the same time, which made no sense given they were still essentially strangers. "Tell me about Clayton Merrick," Rebecca said finally, setting down her fork. "How long has this feud been going on?" Owen grimaced. 3 years since the day I bought this land. Merrick thought it should have gone to him because his ranch borders it to the north. He made a bid at the auction, but I bid higher. He has been trying to run me off ever since. What has he done before this? Cut my fences, spooked my cattle, ran off my ranch hands with threats. Nothing I could prove in court, always just barely on the legal side of harassment. Owen's hands tightened on his coffee cup. "But this is different. This is attempted murder of my livelihood. This crosses a line." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Which means he is getting desperate. Men like Merrick do not escalate unless they think they are running out of options. What changed recently?" Owen thought about it. "There is talk of the railroad coming through in the next few years. If it does, the route will cut through either my land or his. Mine is slightly more level, better for laying track. Land values will skyrocket for whoever gets the right of way. There it is." Rebecca's eyes were sharp. "He thinks if he can drive you out now, before the railroad surveys are finalized, he can buy up your land for pennies and make a fortune. This was not about petty revenge, Owen. This was business." The cold calculation of it made Owen's blood boil all over again. "Then I need to make sure the sheriff understands that. This was not just poisoning livestock. It was attempted destruction of property for profit." "Exactly. Which is why you need to ride into town first thing tomorrow with that water sample and a written statement." Rebecca leaned forward. "But you also need to protect yourself going forward. Merrick has shown he is willing to commit serious crimes. He might escalate further." Owen met her eyes across the table. "Are you saying I should be worried about more than my cattle? I am saying desperate men do desperate things. And you need to be careful." Rebecca's voice was serious. "I can stay for a few days to help monitor the cattle and make sure they recover. But after that, you should consider hiring someone you trust to watch your back." The thought of Rebecca leaving sent an unexpected pang through Owen's chest. "You would do that? Stay, I mean. The cattle need monitoring. It is the responsible thing to do." Rebecca's tone was professional, but Owen thought he saw something softer in her eyes. Besides, I want to see this through. I want to help you prove Merrick did this. They finished dinner and cleaned up together, falling into an easy partnership that felt far more natural than it should. When the dishes were done, they walked out to check on the cattle in the last light of evening. The animals were resting quietly, their breathing steady if still labored. Rebecca examined several of them, her touch gentle and sure. "They are doing better than I expected," she said, relief evident in her voice. "The charcoal is working. With luck and good care, most of these will make a full recovery." Owen stood beside her in the gathering darkness, listening to the normal sounds of cattle settling for the night. The mountains rose black against a sky full of stars, and somewhere an owl called out its hunting song. This was the land he loved, the life he had built, and Rebecca had helped him save it. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I mean it. Without you, I would have lost everything today." Rebecca turned to look at him, and in the starlight her face was soft and open. "You are welcome. I am glad I was there." She hesitated, then added, "My father always said the measure of a man is what he does when things go wrong. You did not give up, even when it looked hopeless. That says something about your character." "I had help from someone who knew what she was doing." Owen smiled. "That says something about your character, too." They walked back to the ranch house together, and Owen showed Rebecca to the bunkhouse one more time, making sure she had everything she needed. "I will be up to check the cattle in a few hours," he said. "No need for you to lose sleep. You have done enough for one day." "We will take turns," Rebecca said firmly. "I will take the first watch. Wake me at midnight and you can take the second. That way we both get some rest." Owen wanted to argue but knew it was pointless. "Fair enough. Good night, Rebecca." "Good night, Owen." He walked back to his cabin feeling lighter than he had since morning, despite everything that had happened. His cattle were alive. He had a plan for dealing with Merrick. And he had met someone remarkable, someone who had shown up exactly when he needed help and asked for nothing in return, except the chance to do the right thing. Owen lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling beams he had cut and hauled and fit together with his own hands. His body ached with exhaustion, but his mind would not settle. He kept seeing Rebecca's face in the morning sun, fierce and determined. Kept hearing her calm voice directing him through the crisis. Kept feeling the rightness of working beside her, as if they had been doing it for years instead of hours. This was dangerous territory. He could not afford to develop feelings for a woman he had just met, a woman who had her own life and her own reasons for being here that had nothing to do with him. But his heart, apparently, was not interested in logic or caution. His heart had already decided that Rebecca Hartford was someone special, someone worth knowing better. Owen forced himself to sleep for a few hours, then rose at midnight as promised. He found Rebecca sitting on the bunkhouse steps, her rifle across her knees, watching the pasture where the cattle slept. She looked up when he approached, and even exhausted in the middle of the night, she was beautiful. "All quiet?" he asked softly. "All quiet. I checked them an hour ago." "They are resting well." Rebecca stood and stretched, wincing slightly. "Your turn. Try to get some sleep." "Rebecca," Owen said, and she paused. "Thank you for all of it." She smiled, and it transformed her face. "You already thanked me. Go sleep, Owen. We have a long day ahead tomorrow." Owen took her place on the steps and watched her walk back to the bunkhouse. The night was cool and clear, the stars so bright they cast shadows. He could smell pine and sage on the wind, and beneath it the earthy smell of healthy cattle. His cattle. Still alive because of Rebecca's skill and courage. He checked the herd twice before dawn, walking quietly among the sleeping animals, looking for signs of distress. But they were peaceful, their breathing easier than it had been hours before. Rebecca had been right. The treatment was working. By the time the sun rose over the mountains, painting the valley in shades of gold and pink, Owen was cautiously optimistic that his herd would survive. Rebecca emerged from the bunkhouse as he was starting the morning fire, already dressed and ready for the day. "How are they?" she asked immediately. "Good. Better than good, actually. I think we are past the worst." Owen poured coffee for them both. "I will ride into town this morning with the water sample and my statement. Will you be all right here alone?" "I know how to use a rifle, and I am not afraid of Clayton Merrick." Rebecca accepted the coffee gratefully. "Go do what needs doing. I will watch the cattle and your property." Owen saddled his best horse, a rangy bay gelding named Chief who could cover ground all day without tiring. He tucked the water sample carefully into his saddlebag along with a written statement detailing everything that had happened. Rebecca walked with him to the barn, her presence solid and reassuring. "Be careful," she said. "If Merrick has people in town, they will know you are coming." "I will be careful." Owen swung into the saddle, then looked down at her. "Rebecca, when this is over, when the cattle are fully recovered and Merrick has been dealt with, I would like to talk to you about maybe staying on. I need someone who knows animal medicine, and you need clients who will treat you with respect. We could help each other." Rebecca's eyes widened slightly, and a flush colored her cheeks. "That is a generous offer. Let us get through this crisis first, then we can talk about the future." "Fair enough." Owen touched his hat brim and turned Chief toward the road. But he rode away smiling because Rebecca had not said no. The ride into Montezuma took 3 hours along a mountain road that was sometimes barely more than a trail. Owen passed through stands of aspen and pine, crossed rushing streams still swollen with snowmelt, and saw the high peaks gleaming white against the blue sky. This was country that could kill you if you were careless, but it was also the most beautiful place Owen had ever seen. Montezuma was a mining and ranching town of maybe 300 souls, its main street lined with false front buildings that tried to look more substantial than they were. Owen tied Chief outside the sheriff's office and went inside, his statement and water sample in hand. Sheriff Tom Brennan was a grizzled man in his 50s who had seen every kind of trouble the mountains could produce. He listened to Owen's story without interruption, examined the water sample, and read the written statement with growing anger. "Clayton Merrick," he said finally, his voice heavy. "I wish I could say I was surprised, but that man has been dancing on the edge of the law for 20 years. Problem is proving it. He is too smart to get his own hands dirty. Rebecca Hartford saw one of his ranch hands riding away from my property before dawn yesterday." Owen leaned forward. "She can testify to that." The sheriff's eyebrows rose. "Rebecca Hartford, old Doc Hartford's daughter." At Owen's nod, he let out a low whistle. "She is a sharp one, that girl. If she says she saw something, I believe her, but it still might not be enough for charges. Merrick will claim his hand was just riding through public land, that anyone could have poisoned your water." Owen's jaw tightened. "So he gets away with it." "I did not say that. I said it might not be enough for charges. But it is enough for me to go have a very serious conversation with Mr. Merrick about staying the hell away from your property." Sheriff Brennan stood up. "I will ride out there today, and I will take this water sample to the assayer to confirm it is arsenic. If it is, and if I find any evidence at all linking it to Merrick, I will arrest him. You have my word on that. It was not everything Owen wanted, but it was something." "Thank you, Sheriff. Thank Rebecca Hartford when you see her. That woman has more guts than half the men in this county." The sheriff walked Owen to the door. "And Owen, watch your back. Merrick does not take kindly to being challenged." Owen rode back to the ranch with the sheriff's warning echoing in his mind. The sun was high when he arrived, and he found Rebecca in the pasture with the cattle, checking each one methodically. She looked up when he approached, relief flashing across her face. "How did it go?" she called out. Owen dismounted and walked over to her. "The sheriff believes us. He is going to confront Merrick and have the water tested, but he says getting charges to stick will be hard." Rebecca nodded, unsurprised. "At least Merrick will know you are not rolling over. That might make him think twice before trying something else. Maybe." Owen looked at the cattle, noting how much better they looked than they had the day before. "How are they?" "Improving steadily. I think we can safely say all 13 survivors will make it." Rebecca smiled, and Owen felt his heart lift. "You still have a breeding program, Owen." "It is damaged but not destroyed." They walked the pasture together, and Rebecca explained which animals would need special monitoring and which were already back to normal health. Her knowledge was impressive, and Owen found himself asking questions about herd management and cattle diseases, just to keep her talking. She had a way of explaining complex things simply, and her passion for the work shone through every word. That evening they ate dinner together again, and the conversation flowed more easily. Rebecca told him about growing up in a veterinarian's house, about the dozens of animals her father had treated in their barn, about learning to read from medical textbooks. Owen told her about his childhood on a hardscrabble ranch in New Mexico, about losing both parents young and striking out on his own to make something better. "You have done well for yourself," Rebecca said, looking around the solid cabin. "This is a good ranch, Owen. You should be proud." "I would be prouder if I had not just lost 9 head of cattle to a vindictive neighbor." But Owen smiled as he said it, the sting of the loss fading in the warmth of good company. "You saved 13. That is what matters." Rebecca met his eyes across the table. "Do not let Merrick take away what you have accomplished." Over the next 3 days, they fell into a routine that felt startlingly domestic. Owen handled the heavy ranch work while Rebecca monitored the cattle and advised on their care. They ate meals together, talked about everything from politics to poetry, and worked side by side in companionable silence. Owen found himself looking forward to every conversation, every shared smile, every moment in Rebecca's presence. He was falling for her. There was no point denying it. The way she laughed at his jokes, the competent movements of her hands as she worked, the fierce intelligence in her eyes when they discussed something that mattered. Everything about Rebecca Hartford drew him in like a lodestone, and Owen had no idea what to do about it. On the 4th day after the poisoning, Sheriff Brennan rode out to the ranch with news. Owen and Rebecca met him in the yard, and the grim set of his face told them the story before he spoke. "The water was poisoned with arsenic, just like you thought," the sheriff said. "But I could not find enough evidence to charge Merrick. He claims none of his hands were anywhere near your property that morning, and I cannot prove otherwise. It is your word and Rebecca's against his." Owen's hands clenched into fists. "So that is it. He just walks away." "Not exactly." The sheriff dismounted and accepted the coffee Rebecca offered him. "I made it very clear to Merrick that you are under my protection now. I told him if anything else happens to your property or your livestock, I will assume he is responsible and act accordingly." I also spread the word around town about what happened. Every rancher within 20 miles knows Merrick poisoned your cattle, even if I cannot prove it in court. His reputation has taken a hit." Rebecca spoke up. "Will that be enough to stop him? Time will tell." "But Merrick is a proud man, and he cares about his standing in the community. Knowing everyone thinks he is a poisoner and a coward might actually hurt him more than jail time would have." The sheriff finished his coffee and handed back the cup. "Keep your eyes open, both of you. And if anything else happens, you come find me immediately." After the sheriff left, Owen and Rebecca stood in the yard, the weight of incomplete justice heavy between them. Owen kicked at the dirt in frustration. I wanted him arrested. I wanted him punished. I know, but this is not nothing. Rebecca put a hand on his arm, and Owen felt the touch like an electric current. You stood up to him. You exposed what he did, and now everyone knows what kind of man he is. That is its own form of justice. Owen looked down at her hand on his arm, then up into her eyes. You keep finding the bright side of things. How do you do that after everything you have been through? Because anger and bitterness would destroy me. Rebecca's voice was soft but firm. My father taught me that. He faced terrible injustice and still chose to be kind, to help where he could, to believe in people. I try to honor his memory by doing the same. Your father raised a remarkable woman. Owen said it without thinking, then felt his face heat. I mean, what I meant to say is. Rebecca smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I know what you meant. Thank you. They stood there in the afternoon sun, hands still touching, and Owen felt the world narrow down to just the two of them. He could see the pulse beating at the base of Rebecca's throat, could smell the sage and sunshine scent of her hair. His heart was pounding, and every instinct told him to close the distance between them, to find out if her lips were as soft as they looked. But Rebecca stepped back first, breaking the moment. I should check on the cattle one more time before dinner, she said, her voice slightly breathless. Right, yes, I will go see to the horses. Owen practically fled to the barn, his heart racing and his thoughts in chaos. He had wanted to kiss her. Hell, he still wanted to kiss her. But what if she did not feel the same way? What if she was just here out of obligation to her father's memory, and once the cattle were healthy she would ride away and never look back? That night at dinner, there was a new tension between them, a awareness that had not been there before. Their eyes met across the table and held a moment too long. Their hands brushed, reaching for the same dish, and both pulled back as if burned. Owen found himself talking too much to fill the silence, telling stories he barely remembered afterward, just to keep from blurting out what he was really thinking. Rebecca seemed similarly affected, laughing too brightly at his jokes, asking questions she had already asked before. When they finished eating and cleaning up, they stood awkwardly in the doorway, neither wanting to be the first to say goodnight. The cattle are well enough that I could probably head home tomorrow, Rebecca said finally, not meeting his eyes. You do not need me watching over them anymore. Owen's heart sank. You could stay. I meant what I said about hiring you to handle animal medicine for the ranch. I can pay you, not much at first, but as the herd rebuilds. Owen. Rebecca looked up at him then, and her eyes were troubled. I appreciate the offer, but I need to think about it. This is all very sudden. I understand. Owen forced himself to smile. But the offer stands, for as long as you need to think about it. Rebecca nodded and started to turn away, then stopped. Owen, you should know that She trailed off, shook her head. Never mind, good night. Good night, Rebecca. Owen did not sleep that night. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had just happened and what he should do about it. Rebecca had been about to say something important, but had stopped herself. Why? Was she feeling the same pull he was, or was he reading far too much into friendly gestures? When dawn finally broke, Owen dragged himself out of bed and went to start the morning chores. He found Rebecca already up, her horse saddled, her saddlebags packed. She was standing by the corral, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. You are leaving, Owen said, trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice. I should get back to my place. I have been neglecting my own chores for 4 days. Rebecca turned to face him, and Owen saw shadows under her eyes that suggested she had slept as poorly as he had. But I will come back in a few days to check on the cattle, just to make sure. You do not have to do that. I know, but I want to. Rebecca took a deep breath. Owen, I need some time to think. About your offer, about everything. This week has been intense, and I do not want to make important decisions when I am tired and emotional. That makes sense. Owen stepped closer. But Rebecca, before you go, I need you to know something. This is not just about hiring a veterinarian. You must know that. Rebecca's eyes widened. Owen, I am not asking you for anything right now. I just need you to know that these last 4 days, getting to know you, working beside you, it has meant something to me, something more than gratitude. Owen's heart was pounding, but he forced himself to continue. So when you are thinking about staying, I hope you will think about that too. For a long moment, Rebecca just looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she smiled. I will think about it, I promise. She swung into her saddle with easy grace, but before she could ride away, Owen caught her horse's bridle. Rebecca, one more thing, be careful. If Merrick figures out you helped me, he might come after you too. I can take care of myself. But Rebecca's voice was warm. But thank you for worrying. Owen watched her ride away until she was just a speck on the horizon, then disappeared entirely into the trees. The ranch felt empty without her, the silence oppressive after 4 days of easy conversation and shared purpose. He threw himself into work, repairing fences and checking cattle and mucking out stalls, anything to keep his mind occupied. But everything reminded him of Rebecca. The bunkhouse where she had stayed, the pasture where they had worked together to save the cattle, the dinner table where they had talked for hours. Owen had been alone for most of his adult life and had never minded it before, but now his own company felt inadequate. 3 days passed. Owen threw himself into rebuilding his operation, making plans for breeding the surviving cattle, calculating how long it would take to get back to where he had been before the poisoning. He rode into town for supplies and heard whispers everywhere about Clayton Merrick, how he had poisoned a neighbor's cattle, how he could not be trusted. The community's judgment would not put Merrick in jail, but it was something. On the 4th day, Owen was working on a broken section of corral fence when he heard hoofbeats. He looked up, his heart leaping with hope, and there was Rebecca riding down the trail on her Appaloosa. She was dressed for work in her buckskin trousers and worn shirt, and she had a second horse on a lead line, this one loaded with bags and boxes. Owen dropped his hammer and walked to meet her, trying not to let his eagerness show too obviously. You came back. I said I would check on the cattle. Rebecca dismounted, but there was something different in her posture, a nervous energy that had not been there before. But I also brought my things. My father's medical supplies, his books, everything I need to set up a practice. Owen's heart stuttered. Rebecca, does that mean? It means I thought about your offer, about everything you said. Rebecca met his eyes, and Owen saw hope and fear and determination all mixed together in her expression. I want to stay, not just as your veterinarian but as your partner in rebuilding this ranch, if the offer still stands. Of course it stands. Owen took a step closer. Rebecca, are you sure? This is not going to be easy. The ranch is in bad shape financially and Merrick might still cause trouble. I am sure. Rebecca's chin lifted. I am tired of hiding on my own patch of land, treating sick rabbits and not much else. I want to do the work my father trained me for, and I want to do it with someone who respects my skills and treats me as an equal. She paused, then added softly, someone I am coming to care about very much. Owen closed the distance between them in 2 strides. He took Rebecca's hands in his, feeling the calluses from hard work, the strength in her fingers. Rebecca Hartford, I have known you less than a week, and you have already changed my life. I would be honored to have you as my partner. In the ranch and in anything else you might be willing to consider. Owen Jameson, are you asking to court me? Rebecca's eyes sparkled with amusement and something warmer. I suppose I am, though I am doing a terrible job of it. Owen laughed, giddy with relief and joy. I should probably say something romantic about your eyes or your smile, but honestly, what I love most is how competent you are. The way you saved my cattle, the way you stand up for what is right, the way you know exactly who you are and refuse to apologize for it. That might be the best compliment I have ever received. Rebecca squeezed his hands. And yes, Owen, I would very much like to be courted by you, but we should probably start by getting my things unpacked and setting up a proper veterinary station. Romance is fine, but we have work to do. Owen laughed and pulled her into a hug, feeling her arms come around him in return. She fit perfectly against his chest, and he rested his chin on top of her head for just a moment, breathing in the scent of her hair. Then, because work really did need doing, they reluctantly separated and began unloading her supplies. Rebecca had brought an impressive array of medical equipment. Bottles of medicines and tinctures, surgical instruments, books on animal anatomy and disease, bandages and splints, and a dozen other things Owen could not identify. They converted the back room of his barn into a treatment area, with a sturdy table for examining animals and shelves for storing supplies. "This is perfect," Rebecca said, organizing bottles by type. "We can handle most common problems right here, and for serious cases we will have space to keep animals under observation." Owen liked the sound of that word. "You know, if we are going to be partners, we should probably make it official. Draw up papers, agree on profit sharing, that kind of thing." Rebecca looked up from her organizing. "You would really make me an equal partner, not just an employee. You saved this ranch, Rebecca. Without you, I would have nothing left. That makes you more than an employee." Owen leaned against the doorframe. "Besides, I have a feeling you are going to make this operation more successful than it ever would have been with just me running it." They spent the rest of the day working together, and by evening the veterinary station was set up, and Rebecca's belongings were moved into the bunkhouse. Over dinner, they made plans for the ranch's future, which bulls to buy for breeding, how to market their cattle to get the best prices, how Rebecca could build a veterinary practice treating other ranchers' animals for extra income. "We should expect some pushback," Rebecca warned.